On the 14th of July, 1789, a mob of over 600 French citizens, angered by years of economic inequality and political repression, stormed and later tore down the Bastille, a building which for centuries had symbolized the despotic nature of the monarchy that ruled over them. Their actions were aimed not at self-enrichment or gratification, but a collective pursuit of justice, rooted in the tripartite ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. This electrifying moment marked the beginning of a revolution that would reshape not only France, but the world itself, coming to inspire the movement towards freedom and democracy on a global scale. Importantly, on the 4th of February 1794, in pursuit of these ideals of freedom and equality, the newly formed French Republic passed the appropriately named Law of the 4th of February, which abolished slavery across all French territories. This was later codified within the Republic's constitution, passed 1 year later in 1795, which explicitly banned slavery and the slave trade across the French Empire. Over the next 4 years, the most momentous event was the gradual rise of a newcomer within the military sphere, a general by the name of Napoleon Bonaparte, who, from 1796 to 1799, would conquer parts of Italy, Austria, and Egypt in search of those ideals of the French Revolution and the spread of freedom and equality in the modern world. His prominence allowed for him to build up a substantial following within France, and on the 9th of November, 1799, Napoleon, alongside a number of his confidants, mounted a coup d'etat, placing himself at the head of their newly formed government as the first consul of France. And yet, on the 20th of May, 1802, less than 3 years after gaining total control over France, Napoleon passed a law reinstating the system of slavery in all overseas French colonies, an action which represented a stark reversal of the principles upon which the French Revolution was built upon, and the principles of liberty and equality. There is always one question that comes up when I mention this fact to people. Why? Why would Napoleon, a man in our eyes, who was seen as the embodiment of everything the revolution stood for and the values that it was made for, reinstate a doctrine that stripped countless individuals of their freedom, effectively quashing any hope for genuine equality across the French territories? Whilst this is a good question, it has a simple answer. Napoleon was a pragmatist who displayed a manifest indifference throughout his life to the humanitarian dilemmas that slavery posed. Rather, as his imperial ambitions continued to grow, he became fixated on the political and economic advantages that slavery offered. Simply put, reinstating the system of slavery made Napoleon's efforts for further colonization cheaper and more efficient. Instead, the key question that should emerge from this situation is not why Napoleon did what he did, but rather why so many of us seem unaware of these actions, despite him representing arguably one of the most famous figures in modern history. There are many reasons for this, but I would like to draw your attention to one. It seems that collectively, humanity shares a particular proclivity when thinking about the past. For us, history unfolds as if it were an alluring and enthralling narrative, one filled with stories of heroism, adventures, and perseverance, drawing us into a compelling drama of humanity's struggles and triumphs throughout time. It is because of this that we often look at history through a set of rose-tinted glasses, obscuring the realities and uncomfortable truths that lie beneath its captivating veneer. Most importantly, we don't like to see ourselves as the bad guys. For many of us, history serves as a reminder that evil does not go unpunished, and that justice has a way of catching up with those who sow the seeds of wrongdoing. For some, this simply means focusing on the parts of history that confirm these ideas. Why would we not find comfort in the defeat of a villain like Adolf Hitler, or confirmation of the strength of the human spirit through someone like Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela? But for others, this attempt to engineer the past goes further and extends to the deliberate distortion of the historical record for some greater, often ideological purpose. This concept is known as historical negationism, and is exactly what it sounds like, the negating or omitting of historical truths for some greater overarching idea. The term was first used in reference to the conventional memory of Vichy France, which was the area of France under Nazi occupation during World War II. In this perception, the complicity of many French citizens during the conflict in regards to the persecution of Jews and other minorities, and in regard to the other war crimes that the Nazis committed, had been a great source of shame and guilt for the nation, and was in itself largely denied. Instead, the traditional and conservative historical narratives of the period suggested that the French, much like many other European nations at the time, were simply victims of the Nazis, who were unwilling to go along with the schemes but forced to due to the Nazi occupation of the nation. Recently, within Poland, this step was taken one step further, as, in 2018, the country amended their National Remembrance Act to state that any public speech which attributed responsibility for the Holocaust to Poland would be considered a criminal action, with up to 3 years in prison for this statement. Thankfully, the law was revoked later that year after international outcry, but the message it sent, that history could be tailored to the ideals of those in charge, was clear. This phenomenon exists in all historiographical circles across the world, and unfortunately, we, as Australians, are not innocent of it either. Following the distribution of the Bringing Them Home report in 1997, which represented the first serious Australian governmental inquiry into the stolen generation and the Australian government's actions during it, the government of the time, under John Howard, rejected several of the report's findings, and most importantly, refused to offer an apology. This set a wave of historians who, alongside the thoughts of Howard, have been accused of viewing our nation's past through what is called a white blindfold, refusing to perceive the realities of our shared history, and instead nullify it and dull it down to something that is easily accessible and easily perceptible by our population. But the question still remains, how should we treat these parts of history? How do we deal with the darkest shadows in our collective memory? We certainly cannot commemorate them, but it is equally as bad to overlook or obscure them. They are a part of our history, and most importantly, they offer us crucial lessons for the future. E.H. Carr, one of the most famous historians of the 20th century, stated that the present age is the most historically minded of all ages, and modern man is to an unprecedented degree self-conscious and therefore conscious of history. He peeks back into the twilight out of which he has come, into the hope that the faint beams will illuminate the obscurity into which he is going. The past, present, and future are linked together in an endless chain of history. The challenge lies in striking a delicate balance between acknowledging the darker chapters of our history and ensuring that they serve as a beacon for the future. This duality of preserving our collective memory while moving forward is a profound task that requires not only reflection, but conscious action. History is an inherently complicated discipline. Skepticism.
Okay, I found this on the web for is inherently. Check it out.
Siri's a bit excited by it as well. And skepticism, when channeled constructively, is a fundamental part of the field, encouraging us to question the narratives we inherit and to critically examine the things we are taught. A desire to go beyond these conventional narratives is not about denying the past or brushing aside its complexity, but rather about embracing it. Without it, we risk falling into the trap of embracing these idealized historical narratives that hinder any true progress for humanity, as we become unable to draw lessons from the past and use them for a brighter future. Acknowledging the darker sides of our history is not a sign of weakness, but rather one of strength and a desire for growth. By accepting these historical realities head on, rather than hiding from them, we use them as a springboard to ensure they never occur again. It is only when we accept the entirety of our history, in all its complex and intricate form, that we may use its light to guide us towards a more informed, just, and compassionate future. Before I finish, I want to dispel one myth about history, and that is that history is not cyclical. While of course history itself is the story of change and ups and downs and empires rising and falling, and there's the classic idiom that what goes up must come down, history simply cannot be seen to repeat itself. Look around. We are not sitting in an ancient Roman amphitheater, and the technology to record this event would not have existed 100 years ago. Instead, as Mark Twain once said, history does not repeat itself, but it does often rhyme. Only by earnestly acknowledging our past can we actively strive to create a positive rhyme for the future, where the echoes of our mistakes and past evils inspire us